travelers, and welcome to another episode of Vertical Stars Podcast 4th season. I'm my loyal listeners. Thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing interview because Cameron Dawson Kim boards the mothership, discuss the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 film. This is part 2 of this series. Now come aboard as we go traversing the stars. But anyway, he plays Casey Jones, which is one of the best characters in the film,
Yes.
and one of the best human characters in the film. Um, was there talk of giving him something more later? Because he doesn't show up
Um,
in the second one. He shows up a little bit in the third, but never in the second. Was there ever talk of doing something more with that character?
yeah, there has been more recently. I will say this with a grain of salt. I think that the Turtles are the least exploited, super popular comic book characters of all time. Even
Hmm.
though, they've what are they on their seventh or eighth film now?
Yeah.
But when Michael Bay took it over, he changed the characters. And that's really never been done before. If you look at Superman or Batman or any of the Marvel characters, they all pretty much look like they did when they started, right?
Right.
With modern iterations, Iron Man has better, technology around him, but fundamentally they look the same, right? Michael Bay changed those characters into like these giant blown up heads shit and all that. And we're never fans because if you talk to fans, they love the first film. They love the
Yeah.
first and second film as much. The third film wasn't done by the Henson Group. It was done by All Effects Inc., the costumes. And I think that, for budgetary reasons, for whatever reason. Ironically, the second and third film were paid for by 20th Century Fox.
Nice.
Completely. They were what's known as a negative pickup. So the Chinese financed those pictures, but then as soon as they were done and we handed over the negative to Fox for the theatrical distribution overseas, because that's what they got. They got the foreign rights. New Line kept the domestic rights, but because it had done the first film wasn't as successful overseas, primarily because of Golden Harvest wanted to be the distributor globally.
Hmm.
Tom had great relationships, but um, the people who were distributing it, we ran into trouble in Japan using the name Ninja. We ran into problems in England using the name Ninja. They had to change it to Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, and because Ninja, particularly in Japan, was not, and it kind of was had hit or miss quality to it in the foreign markets in the first film. But regardless, 20th Century Fox saw the opportunity and saw the box office and knew that they could make money with it.
Hmm.
So they literally both the second and third film were completely paid for before they started by a Fox contract, right?
So,
So
so when you're saying about the movies, the least exploited large film would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So going back to the idea of Casey just had never thought of either having him appear in the second film or doing something with him on his own. Because like I said, the character just it kind of seemed like there was more with him in the film that then
yeah.
it dropped for the second one.
Right. I don't know why. I think that, had it been left to Steve and Brian, had Steve still been on, I'm sure that that storyline would have continued because I think he was a big fan of Casey Jones. And
Hmm.
and the movies were or the comics had, I mean, he was a well-developed character. And I will tell you that in today's world, I think there's movement around. Now, Warner Brothers owns the first three films. They own the distribution rights to one, two, and three. Uh, but Nickelodeon bought the Turtle comics as a whole. They bought out Mirage Studios and all of the rights incumbent there too, right? I think it was 2009 that they completed that sale. And when that happened, um, it's now Paramount Studios that owns they own all of Nickelodeon and CBS and Viacom and all that stuff. So I think anything that were to happen would happen either through Nickelodeon or Paramount.
Hmm.
I'll be honest with you. There are, discussions going on about you know, potential series. I know, Kevin Eastman has got the Last Ronin in production. I think I don't know when it's releasing, but I know there's a lot of excitement about that. Um, but when you look at the characters, whether it's April or Casey Jones or some of the wackadoodle characters that were in that film, they've never been exploited.
Mm.
So I think you'll see in the future that the overall IP contains um, value that has been not, when I say not exploited, in a good way, right?
Mm.
uh, where you develop new content based on those characters.
Now, the other thing that all fans of the first three films, and I must admit I enjoy them all, was a change from the first, especially from the first, is the tone. The tone definitely lightens up by the second and third. Was there a discussion behind that? Was there like what was some of the discussions that changed that?
Well, it was all, this is where the toy company and the new comic books, uh, the original comics they spun off to a much lighter fare. The Not Mirage Studios didn't do it. It wasn't DC Comics. It was another comic book brand, but
Is
it
it
was a bit.
IDW right now?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they wanted to tone it down. So they wanted to, because the toys were targeting 6 to 10-year-olds.
Mm.
They weren't looking at the older audience. So that's why it got toned down. Why it got kind of goofier as it went along. Um,
Mm.
Had it been up to Steve, he would have stayed true to Kevin and Peter's thing with the zingers, it's a Kodak moment, or I love being a turtle and stuff like that. All those lines that gave you some levity, but the and all the banter between Casey and April O'Neil.
Mm.
Uh, that was all good and meant to lighten the mood a little bit, but it was dark. The Foot Clan were, this was, you know, if you talk about Pinocchio and Pleasure Island, this was pleasure. That's what it was based on. That whole thing was based on that Pleasure Island sort of thing that came out of the Pinocchio world, right?
Mm.
I think that's how that got envisioned on screen. You could get cigarettes, kids could get cigarettes, and they could
Yeah.
have their skateboards or whatever, whatever. I was up in Atlanta recently watching scouting for a film, and we were scouting a warehouse, and there's a guy that has created an amazing uh, turtle themed skate park
Oh,
inside,
that's cool.
where it's very much like what you envision that thing to be, and it's an actual skate park
Oh, that's awesome.
inside a. Yeah, it's very cool. I think I have a photo of. Anyway,
So I think the other thing that obviously changes from the first to the second, Judas Hogue is out, and also the character of Danny gets dropped as well. Were those also discussions behind that on what happened between the first and the second?
Well, with Judith, it was a contract issue. It was it's just about money, and she felt like she wanted more, and she'd signed a contract that said no, you don't get. Maybe there was a 10% raise, but with
Yeah.
the with there were two issues. One is that uh, Golden Harvest was probably a little delinquent in making SAG residual payments, and Judith was a member of SAG, and was a staunch supporter of her actor colleagues, her peers. And I don't know if that's ever been resolved. Frankly, the last time I spoke to her, she was still trying to figure out how to do it. And because uh, Jay Shanker and I had come up with a solution for settling out, because the Chinese were not good at that kind of stuff. They didn't like to pay profit. Raymond Chow was dead set against it. But when movies make that much money, you can't hide it all, right? We audited them twice. Our accountant came back from China, from Hong Kong one time, and said, "I'm not going back. I will never go back." I go, "Why?" He goes, "You don't want to know." I said, "Well, I do want to know." He says, "Well, they threatened me." I said, what do you mean they threatened you? He said, we have the money. You're not going to get it. If you try to get it, remember what happened to Bruce Lee? Oh, he
Holy
was scared.
crap.
He was scared shitless. He was, I remember at the time thinking, and this was a big, accounting firm in Los Angeles, big time guys. Usually they got lots of respect wherever they went to do their thing.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was like, no, I'm not going back there. So, but I think it took us 9 years to settle that. No, longer than that, maybe 14 years to settle out with Golden Harvest finally.
Oh, wow.
Actually, no, we started in 1995 is when they stopped communicating with Gary and I. And we kind of took the lead because we had been there from the outset, and we formed a group and got everybody involved, um, and then created an action that finally got settled out and amicably. But we had one key case that settled as the Nickelodeon thing was being done, and then later on in 2015, when the 25-year contract renewed, we that's when we totally settled out with the Chinese, and we just do business with Warner Brothers now.
Hmm.
Um, but um, so it's Warner Brothers. I think we did a screening during the 30th during COVID, and
Yeah.
it was very poorly attended. One night it was all we shot. We had an afternoon screening and a nighttime screening, and it didn't go off very well. But now with this new thing, they're adding theaters every day,
Yeah.
so it's gonna do great. We're stoked, and
So,
we've got we've got posters. I've got this really cool script here.
oh, it's
So that
very cool.
all right, now watch. See, this is the script with storyboards, right?
Oh, that is awesome.
So we then this was our original thing. We remade that into this,
Yeah.
right? And the back is as cool as you can see. It's all the four weapons, right?
Very cool.
You can see it's these are all storyboards that Steve Barron directed. There was a storyboard artist, so we created a limited edition of these of about 100 copies of this.
Oh, wow.
Um, you know that we've been um, taking to some of these screenings, and we take them to Comic Cons occasionally. And there are collectors out there who love this stuff. So,
That is very cool. And and I think I mean obviously as you mentioned the big screening from Fathom around August 17th and August through August 20th, I think 21st. So it's not many films that are still spoken about 35 years later.
uh-huh.
Like this film is. As you said, there's been 7 different films. None of them have the love of the original trilogy. Michael Bay films are definitely not loved like the originals were. What do you think is about them that has resonated for 35 years?
I just think they're just honest. You know, first of all, they're a little frivolous. I think that you have to have your tongue in your cheek when you're a Turtle fan, um, because, and I think the thing that is probably that cuts through everything is that there's in the four turtles, in the four brothers, there's different personalities that reflect a pretty good range of how we treat one another in daily life, right? You can find somebody. Gary was definitely Michelangelo, party animal, right? Like this, like the pizza thing. Uh, Raphael was the sullen and sort of contemplative guy, and I think that the way they kind of created and defined those characters was to allow the audience to find somebody you could relate to, whether it was April or there's the chief of police was that guy, right? You've all encountered somebody like that, and we've in some cases we've encountered people like Casey Jones who've you know had a kind of a rough go of it, and now they've got a vigilante mindset, so to say. Um, you know, with Leonardo, you got, kind of the reluctant leader, and then, the steadfast, dutiful one, always Donnie. And the fact that they could, put their differences aside and all come together to to do martial arts. And you keep in mind that Three Ninjas or those kinds of films were very popular. And I
Mm,
think that, as much as anything, kids just related. And it was odd because when the film's released, we had the younger kids who came during the day at the 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock screenings, where they could, see, and then the midnight screenings were all attended by college kids who were comic book fans, right? And they each got something different out of the movie. So I think there was a little bit of something for everybody. I know Bobby, when tells the story when he started looking at the all the various fight scenes. He said you can't just have fight scenes. You have to have a reason to have a fight, right? He had looked at Star Wars and classic movies that had big battle scenes in them, and he took a page out of that playbook where you basically there's a theme behind every fight, right? It's not just willy-nilly beat everybody up, but that may be a more subtle reference in there, but I think ultimately that's the thing when you see the film, one, it's kind of it's a lighthearted adventure, and there's pizza flopping on Splinter's head and stuff like that. There's great lines throughout the film, and I think like when you're in the theater and you watch the movie, and that very first scene the where Raphael reaches for his sigh and reaches out and goes, "Damn," right when April picks it up. When we reveal him for the first time, we see that mask underneath. It's just brilliant filmmaking, and you hear a gasp, go, "Oh, oh my God, whose is that? That's the guys." And then it breaks into to the skating through the tunnels and the sewer and all, and you go from this really dramatic moment to this kind of like cowabunga moment where
mm.
they're going Ford Fairlane or whatever the lines are down in that thing, but there's so many great lines in the film. Like, well, I've got the one page in front of me where Michelangelo goes, Wayne Gretzky on steroids,
Yeah.
right? He's describing Casey Jones. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like what you always you want to be entertained when you go to the movies. For me, I want to be entertained. I don't want to be hit over the head and made to feel bad when I go to a movie. Sometimes you do, but um, for the most part, it's meant to be entertainment, and I think it's pure entertainment, and it's something that people can relate to, and parents, for whatever reason, bought into it. They bought the toys, they bought the pajamas, they bought the books and they sent their kids in droves to watch the movies. So.
Now, do you? Because obviously next year is the 35th anniversary of the second one, Secret of the Ooze.
Yeah.
Do you foresee um, a similar celebration for the second one happening?
Probably. Yeah, I would think so. I think that the success of this screening, they started with two dates. They started on with 17th and 20th of August is what they booked when they first announced it. And then they added a day, and now it's 7 days. So, and that's all based on ticket sales.
Mm,
Uh, and the way Fathom works is they take a proposal out to their theater group, and the theaters have to buy into it one way or the other, right? They have to say, yeah, we like it, because they know way, way in advance what they're going to do, what they're going to be releasing. But the theatrical business is not doing great,
right.
right? So I think to have a film like this, and when you look at what Fathom has coming up, their biggest successes have been with those Chosen movies recently. I mean, those are the ones that have the longest runs. But to have a week-long run on a Fathom event is a really good thing. Only the top brands, like I think there's a Spider-Man series coming out later in September that has about the same length of time, about a week of screenings. So, um,
Now, I mean, the only thing I'll say, as you and I read a couple of your prior interviews, and I know you mentioned it. When you look at all the other movies that came after the trilogy, the first trilogy, none of them have captured what that first trilogy did. What were they missing that the first ones had?
I think some level of authenticity, but Michael Bay, I think he's a great filmmaker. He's, yeah, you can't take anything away from him, but to just go up and blow stuff up and where the story's not as important as the effects.
Hmm.
People see through that, in my opinion. I think people like story. They want to know who the characters are and how they can relate to them, and whether or not there's some, and they want to be entertained. And I think that, I think this is one of the things that's affecting the box office for some of the Marvel pictures, and even I think Superman did okay recently, but um, I think the audiences, movie-going audiences, kind of tire of just nonstop action and blow things up, and
Hmm.
where it's more about that than it is about, or the effects than it is about the story. And I think, you know, Back in Time is a little bit frivolous. I liked it. I liked the way they shot that out in Oregon rather. It was a really beautiful set,
Hmm.
and all of that. But I think between the first and second, the first is still my favorite film because I think that is Michael Pressman did the second picture, was the director of Ooze, and he was terrific. Well, all three directors were great, but I think Steve had a sensibility about him that was different. And I think given the opportunity to do it again, he and Brian would create something that would be
Hmm.
mind-blowing.
Now,
Um,
I mean, the thing is too. I mean, when you think about the first movie, obviously everyone talked about the costumes, and they were fantastic. And they actually are my favorite versions, also of the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Um, what you don't hear a lot is the credit given to the actors, the human ones.
oh
Like I said,
my
Elias
God.
Koteas, James Sato, Judith. I mean, do you think they don't get the credit they deserve for what they brought to the table?
I think amongst the fans they do. I don't think amongst the critics or the film people they do. I think Sato's had a pretty good career. Elias is not. He just. I mean, he has the odd role here and there, but he's a very private person. He
Hmm.
doesn't like the limelight. And I remember we finally got him to agree, um, with Judith's help, and because we were doing a lot of work with NECA back in 2020,
Hmm.
and they wanted to do a Casey Jones toy, and he had refused and refused, but we finally got, between myself and this guy I work with, Craig Harriman. We have a company called Cowabunga Company, and between the two of us and Judith, um, I think Elias finally agreed. He and Judith got along pretty well, and I think he finally agreed to do that toy.
Well,
That
I would say he shows up. Well, my favorite movies of all time is the movie The Prophecy with Christopher Walken. And he's
Yeah,
star of it, and he's tremendous. I must admit when I watched The Prophecy, and I watched that movie like the Turtles every year, so I usually watch it once at the very least. I actually didn't realize till they connected me at first that he was Casey Jones. And I kind of like it was one of the things I just like stopped. I was like, wait a second. I checked with IMBD, or whatever it's called. Checked it. And was like, wait, holy shit, the same guy. And
yeah.
it could totally blew my mind that that was the same guy. But he is phenomenal.
Oh, he's a great actor. He's a great actor. And listen, um, if you ever, I'm trying to do a there have been interviews with Brian before and Steve where they talk a little bit about how they cast the characters.
Hmm.
When you listen to Brian, I'm gonna, preface this by saying this: he hasn't told the whole story, and nothing but the story, right? In deference to it, and I think Craig and I are working on trying to resolve that in some form. But when Brian talks about it, he talks with such passion about it because he had to cast he first of all he became immersed in the characters themselves, in all five, the animatronic characters, the four turtles and Splinter, and made sure that in casting the people who were the puppeteers, that he aligned them with the right kind of actor who would be in the costume. And keep in mind, we had talking turtles and stunt turtles,
Hmm.
right? So he cast both of those for their physical abilities. With Josh Pius, for instance, he was the only one who did one and two, to my knowledge, and he was also um, he his voice wasn't replaced. He was like a rock in the picture, and Josh is a fantastic actor, and uh, I think Danny. We've spoken to Danny a couple of times, and he basically just dropped out of the business. He didn't want to be in the business. We've
Hmm.
talked. I think he may have come to a couple Comic Cons. Todd Langdon was like that. Todd Langdon goes to Comic Cons. I think he's off the circuit now, but Todd said, I got such great vibe out of the Turtles. I'm never going to charge anybody for an autograph. So it upsets people when he goes to Comic Cons because he's signing autographs and giving stuff away. There's long lines because they know they can get stuff for free. Now,
Yeah,
if you have to, you know, buy a poster for him to sign or whatever, that's one thing. But he's never charged anybody for his autograph.
that's
And
cool.
yeah,
I mean, like I said, those movies, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the '90s really were, I thought it was phenomenal. And I really do, like I said, the 1990, I'm 45 years old. I watched it again prior to the interview just to see one more time. It doesn't get old. It really never doesn't get old. It aged extremely well in a time where CGI effects don't even age in 5 years. This movie has aged
no, right,
extremely well,
right,
and it there's and what like I said, for some reason I said that Leonard Maltin interview, he's like, this is the best a Trump movie can be. Is like there was real depth to it that I think went unrecognized, and behind all the animatronics and the action, there was such layers to the
yeah,
characters. The story has some real depth and gravity to it, and
right.
I think that's also underappreciated when people look back at what this movie was.
Well, I think that's why it's sustained. Why movies that have gravitas, so to say, um, stick around. They do. There was a Fathom event last night that I missed, and I wanted to go see it. Was a movie called Sunset Boulevard with
Hmm.
William Holden and who was Gloria Swanson, I think. Um, but there's classic films from you know, I remember one of my favorite films in the early 60s with The Bridge on the River Kwai. Have you ever seen that?
I believe I saw it with my father many years ago.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
I
it
remember
was a
correctly, is that
great,
the actor from who plays Obi-Wan Kenobi? It was in that correct?
yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alec Guinness. Yes.
yeah. It was a fantastic film. I think the first, I don't know if I'd seen a war movie, but it wasn't really a war movie as much as it was a prison camp movie. And the other prison camp movie I loved is that Steve McQueen film. What's the name of it? Where he's in the prison
Oh, The Great
for,
Escape.
yeah, The Great Escape.
Saw that one. I've seen that one. I think twice. My father. That's one of my father's favorite movies of all time. I
Yeah,
think
it's
I've seen it a
it's
few
one of my
times.
favorite movies for sure. Um, my mentor in the business is a guy named Bob Bagley, who now lives up in Idaho. But Bob was the great filmmaker Bruce Brown, who made Endless Summer, among other things, Big Wednesday, Slippery When Wet. He was his partner, and Bob. They grew up together in Seal Beach, and then later in Capistrano Beach, and all that. And I think there may be a Bruce Brown movie biopic coming out in the future. But um, Bagley uh, was had been making movies, documentary films like surf movies and all that. But when I went to work for TWI, he was the head of production, and he taught me the production business, basically how to make television shows.
Hmm.
And I think that he kind of gave me a sense of you know, one, how to control production, how to schedule things, how to make sure that everybody from the small, I started cleaning toilets. That was one of my very first jobs, was cleaning toilets
Hmm.
and reorganizing libraries of videotape and film that were strung all over the place. I was literally a gopher when I first started, but Bob taught me so much. And in that process, I think I discovered that what happens on movie sets is that it's a family, right? You start as a family and people buy into it, and then They're oftentimes legacy moments. They're people you remember for the rest of your life.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's one of the things that's really thrilling about movie making is that you have this, it's very intense, very like you're spending a lot of money, whether it's a low budget film or a big budget film, it's all relative. You're spending a lot of money in a very short period of time, and you have limited resources to what's that expression my friend Wayne Morris gave me? He said, uh, a director can have anything he wants. You just can't have everything he wants, right? If you want a crane this day, I'll give you the crane, but you can't have that extra day of steady cam or whatever it is. It's always a trade-off, right? Because budgets are budgets. You
Hmm.
have only so much resource to work with.
And,
Um,
well, like I said, the Turtles movie was one of my favorite of all time. Mr. Dawson has been an absolute honor to be with you, sir. I look forward to maybe we can when they do Secret of the Ooze next year. Hopefully, we can do a anniversary, 35th anniversary of Secret of the Ooze, or your project that you're working on right now that you hinted at. Do you want to discuss that real quick, or have an interview about
um,
that, or is that something you can't?
what?
You said you're talking about a new project you were working on.
Oh, listen, I'm involved in a lot of different projects. I work with a producer from Los Angeles by the name of Tim Moore. We did a movie called The Bobby Jones Stroke of Genius with Rowdy Harrington, who wrote Roadhouse, among other things, and or wrote and directed Roadhouse, which
Hmm.
is, I think, still the most seen movie on television of all time. It's been seen more times than anything. And Rowdy introduced me to Patrick. We've got like a half a dozen projects that we're working on.
Hmm.
There's a crime drama, a treasure hunt drama called Pieces of Eight. We've got a really great picture that's about the arrival of the horse on the Great Plains. It's all Native Americans. Um, and we're trying to find the right Native American director to produce that. It's a 12-year-old girl who saves her tribe,
Oh, that's
who
cool.
rides a horse and saves her tribe. Um, so I've got lots of that, and we're working on some turtle related stuff. I can't really talk about it because it's
Okay.
just like it's still an early stage. But if you listen to the fans want more of what was back in the 90s, right? It's almost universal. And I think that now, Bobby Herbeck has great relationships with some studio executives. Even though he's still a hummingbird on crack, he's one of the most entertaining people you'll ever meet.
Thank you. The movie was fantastic, and it really is fantastic to hear your perspective on it. And I want to thank you so much for giving that to us, and obviously two and three, which I don't think they get the appreciation that they deserve either. And I think three is much better than people say it. Have heard from it. I actually enjoyed
Oh,
it.
I would agree with you. Three is a romp. It's got, it's by far the most complex picture. I mean,
Right.
there's lots of, with horses and all that stuff and a lot more effects and whatnot. But yeah, listen, it is, my whole career has been based on being in the right place at the right time for
Mm.
things. The Turtles came out of nowhere. Gary sent me that comic, and I went, "Whoa, okay, I get it." And you know, I probably tried to develop. Uh, I have at least 50 scripts that I've worked on and developed and gotten no's from, right?
Mm.
And part of that is being in Orlando rather than LA, but the trade-off is well and truly worth it for anybody who values lifestyle and their kids over constant work. Now, it's not to say I'm a workaholic. I love working, and I love being in this business, but I'm also in the middle of building wave pools, surfing pools.
Mm.
Uh, because I'm a lifelong surfer, and there's no better physical exercise. Snow skiing or snowboarding takes a close second, but there's nothing like surfing.
Mm.
And being able to bring surfing to the masses, which is what these wave pools are doing. If you've ever heard, somebody use the word stoke, I'm stoked. It comes from surfing. And one of the reasons is that it gives you this sense of being in the zone. I'm going to show you a book that's worth reading if you have a chance. It's called Stealing Fire. And it's about how Silicon Valley, the Navy SEALs, and maverick scientists are revolutionizing the way we work and live. And it's all about finding your zone, finding how to drop into that place where you can perform at your highest level, right?
Hmm.
And in surfing, when you're in the zone, you're stoked, you're riding waves or whatever. But you get that feeling from the most simple ride. And when you're riding a wave, it gives you that sensation of being completely free and being at one with nature, even though it's in a wave pool. I was surfing the other day in the ocean, and it's just the waves were crappy, but being in the ocean, it's just like, okay, it's like medicine,
Hmm.
right? So anyway, I appreciate you, Jeff, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Like I said, it totally is my honor. Like it was it's a big deal. Like I said, appreciate what you did,
That's
but
all right.
again, it was my honor, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.
Good night, sir.
Bye bye.